baby sugar sweet. I wanna tell you about my baby. I wanna speak of her with pride. How she goes out of her way just to make me satisfied. Oh, she's my babe.
So welcome everybody to The Exchange. We are here to tell stories about love or hate or things that we used to love that now we hate. It's all in association with the Smitten show that you see on the walls around you. The idea for this show came from Ron Lambert, who's on our gallery committee. He is one of the professors in the art department at Bloomsburg University. He's a sculpture professor. At some point last fall, it occurred to him that the words smite and smitten are the same word. So when we fall in love, oh, we fell in love, we're smitten. And when we're hit upside the head, that's a smite. But it's the same word. He brought that down, and the gallery committee thought, that's a great theme for a show. And here it is. There is work here that is obviously about love. There is work here about broken hearts. There are things all along that continuum. We had done storytelling here last September on the theme of disasters prompted by the flood. We were doing the show in commemoration of the worst flood in Bloomsburg's history. We got to thinking that those stories and any other stories that we collect start to tell the whole story of who this community is. And there are certain shows here that it just makes sense to do a night like this. Stories will make sense that fit with the show. And what better than love? An emotion that we feel strongly, a lot of who we are can go into that. So that's why we are here tonight. I am going to open with a very short poem on the theme of love by Dorothy Parker. Some people in the crowd seem to know what's coming. She was a wit, one of the Algonquin Round Table. They sat around in the 1930s in New York City and traded bon mots. Her love life was not a happy one. There was a story about her a number of years ago, a movie that was made about her. I don't know if this poem has a title, but I've remembered it for years, ever since I first read it. Oh, life is a glorious cycle of song, a medley of extemporanea, and love is a thing that can never go wrong, and I am Marie of Romania. With that, I will turn the floor over to Karen Rose.
Okay, this is called Love After Love by Derek Walcott. I'm going to do like this so I can see you too. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again that stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. That's it. Thank you.
Well, this is my story, and it's true, every word of it. Okay, I'm on my third life, and that's also true. My first life ended with me needing a heart transplant after a divorce and a bad marriage. My second life ended with me needing breast surgery for metastatic breast cancer, and I ran to California from an abusive marriage. Ended up in the hospital for 12 weeks, having open heart surgery, having my aorta dissected. They wrapped my head nice for 27 minutes, said I'd never talk again. I can talk, but I don't have the ability for short-term memory. That was also, after abusive marriage. I swore off men. No more men. So this is what happened. I really can't come from a place of having no self-esteem, no self-worth. I'm mentally crushed, and I accepted that I was always be alone. Never could I have dreamed that I would have the life that I have now. My soulmate, the other half of my heart, was waiting for me to return home. I'd been gone for 43 years, but I never knew it. You see, Randy and I dated in high school, and after, whenever I came home, but we never formed a romantic relationship. He was always the guy I counted on to be there whenever I needed a friend or to do something with. After running to California from the failed second marriage, I had major heart and emotional issues. When I recovered enough to travel, I needed to return back home to visit relatives and thus needed a place to stay. I immediately thought of and called Randy, and he said yes, no questions asked. I didn't even ask if he was married. I just assumed he was. When I arrived back to my hometown, I found out he was still single. I returned to California this was in 2016. So I returned to California after avoiding spending any time with him because I was afraid of men. So throughout that year, 2016, beginning of 2017, when my son would call, he said he heard something in my voice when I would talk to him about Randy, and he also said that it was the first time in 10 years that I had actually laughed. So he suggested that I contact Randy and see if there might be a place for me in his life. So I emailed Randy and asked about a long-distance relationship, but he really wasn't sure about that. So I arranged a second trip back home, and I stayed with him. Even on our first day, we started feeling that there was more to us. On the second day, I mentioned, hope this doesn't offend anyone, but I mentioned that I had left my bedroom door open the night before, but he didn't visit. He told me he had stood outside my door for a half hour and thought about coming in, but he was just on shore. You see, it had been 40 years since we had even held hands, and we never ever kissed back then, nor had we ever been intimate. That night he came into my room and told me that he loved me for his entire life, that he had dreamed of me for years and was waiting for me to return to him, which I never knew. So I returned to California, and I knew I would be moving in with Randy. 2 weeks later, for my birthday, he figured out how to do a playlist from Amazon and sent it to me. It contained songs that represented how he felt about me over the past. In words, these songs meant so much to me. If you're a country fan, they were What's She Doing Now by Garth Brooks, These Days by Rascal Flatts, In Case You Didn't Know by Brett Young, Wanna Be That Song by Brett Eldridge, Yours If You Want It, and I said I want it, by Rascal Flatts, and My Wish by Rascal Flatts. Needless to say, I was in tears. And I went out and got the mail, and there was his garage door opener and his house key in the mail. Okay, and he also sent a letter that he wanted to become domestic partners, which I didn't know what that was. I had to look it up. So I had a computer class that morning, and I got in my car and turned on the radio, and oh my gosh, God Bless the Broken Road That Brought Me Back to You by Rascal Flatts was on. And I knew that this was meant to be. God really planned for this to happen and for us to be together. So we are together now. I moved home in September of 2017, and I've been never so thoroughly loved in my life. He is everything that I ever dreamed of. When I was a little girl, he is my knight in shining armor. For Valentine's Day last year, he gave me 12 presents, so I could choose one every month, which is really crazy. His family and his friends all knew that he loved me, but I didn't. And his family would say to me, he talks now. I said, what do you mean he talks now? They said he was a very quiet person. He never talked. Well, in California, we talk 4 hours a night. I mean, I didn't know that. So this past December, he gave me something each day, something little each day. And then On Christmas, he gave me the most beautiful diamond and asked me to marry him. And of course, I said yes. We are 67 years old and finally have found our soulmate, the other half of our hearts. So because he's turned out to be such a romantic, I wanted to do something very special, very unique, something just for him for Valentine's Day this year. So in October, I heard on Shark Tank a company called Songlorious. What they do is they take your story, which I just read you, and you get to pick the type of music, the songwriter, and how long you want it. So I had a professional songwriter in Nashville write a song for him from the information I just read to you. The song's 3 minutes in length. It is sung by country folk singer Heather Marie. And I can share this song because I did not buy the royalty rights, which means if it's ever sung by a big star, I don't get any money. I could have bought the rights, but I didn't want that. But people who have known me for years have said that they've never seen me happy. They've never seen me laugh. They just can't believe that this is the person that I've come to be. So I'll play the song for you now.
What's the name of it?
The name of it is, oh my gosh, You're My Everything. I had to think because they did a little revision and they changed the name. So here we go.
We dated in high school, but we were so young. I wish that I'd known then that you were the one. 40 years past, you were always right there to talk or to laugh through the happy and scared. You're the reason I wanna live again. You're my partner, my lover, my best friend. You're the reason I'm as happy as I am. You're everything I want in a man. I love you so much, Randy. I'm so glad you waited for me. When I left California for my hometown, you said I could stay with you this time around. I missed you as soon as I left you. That's why I flew back, and that's when we made love the first time. You're the reason I wanna live again. You're my partner, my lover, my best friend. You're the reason I'm as happy as I am. You're everything I want in a man. I love you so much, Randy. I'm so glad you waited for me. You made me a playlist from Brett Young to Rascal Flatts. All of the lyrics that write the story of our past. These days, my wish, I wanna be that song. You told me you loved me all along. You're the reason I wanna live again. You're my partner, my lover, my best friend. You're the reason I'm as happy as I am. You're everything I want in a man. You proposed on Christmas Eve. I'm so glad you waited for me.
Hello, I'm so glad to be following Cindy because there is going to be an interesting connection
Your song ended your piece, and I'm going to start with the song, but mercifully, I will not sing it. My story is called Love, Maybe, but Definitely Not Marriage. And it is also a true story of my life. When I was very young, a popular song was the song that was made famous by Frank Sinatra, Love and Marriage. I'm sure even if you're much, much younger than I am, you've had to hear it, the torture of love and marriage. Love and marriage goes together like a horse and carriage. Up. Then you can't have some, you can't have none, you can't have one without the other. Phooey, you're darn right you can have one without the other, and who wants to have to fit that mold of marriage? I think marriage is prison. It is, it is death. Well, at least that was my 5-year-old self speaking. What gave me such a low opinion of marriage? Well, all I had to do was observe my family. Let me tell you about some of the ace marriages in my family. First of all, there was my mother's mother, Daisy. Daisy, in 1918, was a young married woman. Well, not all that young, but as you'll hear in a minute. She was married with 3 children under the age of 5. And her husband did the inconsiderate thing of dying from the Spanish flu, leaving her a widow with 3 young children. Times were tough then, and Daisy had come from a family of 12 children. And although it seemed like lots of brothers and sisters could help out, all those brothers and sisters had their own big families and their own challenges. And so none of them could step up and help Daisy with her 3 young children, one of whom was really not much more than a newborn. So Daisy really had no choice. She had to care for her children the best possible way, and that was for them to enter an orphanage. Her husband had been a member of the Oddfellows, and so fortunately, there was an orphanage in Philadelphia with a very fine reputation. And so her 2 daughters, my mother and my aunt, went to the Oddfellows orphanage. And then their younger brother needed a few years to age into his experience as an orphan. But anyway, they were well cared for, she thought, well fed and safe. And that gave her the freedom to try to build up some money so that she could reunite the family. She was a very good cook, and she took a job cooking in a hotel in her town. And of course, hotels in those days, in the 1920s, had lots of clientele who were single men who were passing by on work, whatever. And so before long, a man named Frank came to the hotel, and he liked my grandmother's cooking, and he started to talk with her about how wonderful the food was. Then he started to do some sweet talking, and then he actually proposed. And she thought, this is the answer. This is what I need. I'll be able to get my children out of the orphanage, and they'll have a father, and we'll be together. So she agreed, and they married, and within the year, she was pregnant and penniless. Frank, dear soul, was a con man. He had married her and drained her savings and taken her checking account and vamoosed, leaving her in a worse position than she was before she met him. The police were involved, of course, because my grandmother needed some help. And when they tracked down Frank, they realized she wasn't the only wife looking for him. He had another wife who also had gone through the same experience. So there were at least 2 angry women who needed justice. And they never got it, but at least Frank did serve time in jail, which was a horrible humiliation to my grandmother, who had already suffered so much. And now her reputation in the community, she thought, was ruined forever. So wouldn't you think after 2 failed marriages that might be time to say enough? Hope springs eternal. And Daisy this time thought she was going for the real security and the reputation that she had longed for. This time she met an older man who was a justice of the peace in her town, and he had a reputation as a very honest man. His wife had died a few years before, and he was lonely. But he was also 25 or more years older than she was. So she thought, this has got to be a safe marriage, and surely now I will be able to reunite my family. But actually, it didn't happen. He became very ill, and Daisy spent all day cooking and taking care of the house, and then all night nursing her husband through all of the illnesses before his passing. So 3 strikes, and she was definitely out, and never was able to reunite the family to her satisfaction, and definitely never had a high regard for marriage. She didn't sing love and marriage, believe me, and she never sang the praises of marriage at all. Well, that was my mother's mother. Let me tell you about my father's mother. My father's mother is Emma, and Emma was a very sweet, very gentle woman. My other grandmother was not. She was feisty. And Emma had 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls. She took very good care of them. She was a very good cook also, and a sewer, and took excellent care of the house. And she seemed like a very fine wife from all I heard of her early years, but she was also the victim of spousal abuse. My grandfather, who I had the pleasure never to meet, would be abusive. He would probably be physically abusive, but the witnessing was always his verbal abuse. When he would go off in the morning for work, he would give her a list of jobs she should do, in addition to all the other things I've already mentioned. But here was the checklist of things that he wanted her to accomplish that day. And when he returned, if everything wasn't done, he would blow his top, and he would abuse her in front of the children, in front of other family members and neighbors, whoever could hear. He was a hot temper. And his sons were very influenced by him, as you can imagine. My grandfather's favorite insult was to call his wife a dumb hammer. Well, that really appealed to the boys, apparently. So they would say, "Mama's a dumb hammer, Mama's a dumb hammer." So you can imagine their future marriages and their relationships with their wives. Well, now to the marriage that I really got to witness, and the one that was the most formative. Mother coming from her mother's poor marriage, and my father coming from his mother's poor marriage, made quite a couple. My father was they met, I should say, when my mother's brother began to date my father's sister, and they ended up marrying, but bringing my mother and father together also, and theirs was, my uncle and aunt had one of those marriages that didn't work out so well. And actually, neither did my parents, but at least it lasted. My father was always a very forceful person, a persuasive talker, and he had big ideas. His biggest idea was that Mom and he should have 12 children, cheaper by the dozen. And if you had 12 children, the kids would do all the work. You would be king and queen, and you would just give a list to the kids. Where did that idea come from? And the kids would do it, and you would just relax and enjoy having all of the work done for you. I was one of those kids. Was he nuts? There was no way we were going to be his slave. So fortunately, the plan was revised. We didn't get to 12, but we had 7 children, and that was tough because we were poor. And my father was very absent. He thought that being a father and a husband was that on a Friday he would give Mom a check and say, "Make that stretch, because that's all you're getting till next Friday." And then she'd have to work magic to try to buy everything with it. Also, he liked to go and relax with his buddies on the weekend, leaving Mom, after being with us all day, 365 days a year, 24 hours in a day. You know the whole routine. She had us for the weekend, too. She never had a break. She never even learned to drive, which would have been smart, because then she could have gotten into the car and gotten away. But she would sometimes try to walk for some peace and quiet, but hey, 7 of us, we were faster than she was. She never escaped us. So by about the age of 5, I could tell that the drudgery and the relentless work that my mother had to endure was no future for me. forget marriage. Now, here for the bright spot, finally. The bright spot. On my first day of first grade, I met Miss Swampshire. Miss Swampshire was wonderful. She was my teacher. I hadn't gone to kindergarten, so she was my first teacher. And she was smart, kind, very intelligent. Children liked her and children learned from her. She also had gray clothes, drove a red car, and wore perfume. But best of all about her, she was a spinster. A spinster! Hurrah, a spinster! You know, that's supposedly a dirty word, but not when it's Miss Swampshire, and not when I've seen marriage. So immediately, I decided I would be a spinster. Miss Swampshire, here I come. I knew I was going to have to prepare for college. That was the only way I could get a job as a teacher. So education became super important. I loved school. I loved homework. I hated summer vacation. It was unendurable. I could not wait for finally September to come around. The rest of my family thought I was really crazy, but who cared? And so I worked hard, and fast forward a few years, I arrived at Bloomsburg State College, Teachers College. And I knew I was on my way. 4 years, and I would be Miss Swampshire. I was roomed with a roommate who was just about my total opposite. I'm going to call her Anne to protect her privacy, but as much as I had wanted to come to college and had worked hard, Anne only went to college because her mother had gone to Bloomsburg, and this was going to be a family tradition. She hated to study. She had not been a good student. What she had been was a good socialite and had gone steady for at least a year in high school. I'd had 2 dates, so compare that. And they weren't very good either. But Anne found, although she and her boyfriend had broken up the summer before college, in no time at all, she found Rob, and they were a twosome that stayed together for 4 years. So, of course, Anne thought there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't interested in guys, and it was her crusade to find the right man, the right guy for me. And so she would, how about this guy, that guy, whatever. They usually were Rob's friends, and I found them pretty shallow and male chauvinistic, and no thank you. I asked her, please stop matchmaking. I'm fine. I don't mind being in the dorm studying, getting good grades, and becoming Miss Swampshire. But it bothered her, because that wasn't her style. So toward the end of freshman year, I guess I shouldn't say I was surprised, but Anne came charging into the room and said, Linda, I found him. I found the perfect guy for you. And I said, yeah. And she said, no, really, not like any of those others who are perfect. He is really perfect. He is smart. He likes to study. He is so cool. I've got to show him to you. Okay. So a few days later, we were walking on campus, and Fran hugged me and said, there he is, see him? Well, he was about 50 yards away and walking across campus, and she said, what do you think? Well, I think he can walk upright, and he has a good gait, and he looks perfectly normal. But, what more am I going to say from 50 yards away? So I said, please, Anne, this is not going to happen. Back off. And so she did. And for 2 more years, I just managed pretty well myself with whatever pursuits I had. But one day, starting a new semester, that perfect guy ended up in not just 1, but 2 of my English Lit classes. Now, of course, he had absolutely no idea who I was. He didn't know he'd been pointed out as the ideal mate. And so I was able to be a spy and just watch and listen and see and realize that, he's not at all like Rob. And Anne's kind of right. He is special. He is definitely different. Whether he's perfect, that time will tell. And a few weeks later, I was actually on a date with John, and we were driving to Lewisburg to go and hear a lecturer. And we heard the lecture, and we drove home, talking all the way, and talking for days and days and days, it seemed. And I thought, that first part of that stupid song might be all right. That love part might have an opening for that, but still wasn't keen on anything more than that. And I didn't think that there was any reason to even think about it. But a few weeks later, when it was almost time for Easter break, and John proposed, I said, I think I'm going to have to think about that. Thinking, Miss Wampshire. I went home and thought of nothing else. I drew up a list, like being Miss Wampshire and then being a wife. And how could I jiggle things so that I could be Miss Wampshire and still be a wife, didn't. But I have to tell you, it was a difficult decision. But 52 years and 7 months and 17 days and 5 hours later, I have to tell you, it is possible to be Miss Wampshire and to be very, very happily a wife. And I recommend it, but you have to find the right person to ask the question, or you take the initiative and ask the question yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. That was really wonderful. And as nervous as you said you would be, you did great. Everyone really, yes. I think there is really something cathartic about getting up in front of people and telling these stories that we've had in here. You get them out, especially in a group of receptive people, and it really works. So thank you again.
Thank you. Okay, this is a story I told a while ago. We're going to go back in time a little bit to spring of 2017. And I know no one wants to go back to those years, but it'll be relevant, I promise. And this is particularly about a comment that then Attorney General Jeff Sessions made. He was frustrated with the ban, the lack of cooperation about his travel ban, and he said, how can somebody, what's this guy in this little island in the Pacific? What does he have to do with, government stuff, that little island in the Pacific? But that island in the Pacific is where my daughter was at that time. She still lives there now, but at that time she was going to school there. And that island in the Pacific mattered very much to me. And we're going to spring ahead to, I can't read my notes. What's the point of a cheat sheet if you can't read it? To January, not less than a year later, January 2018, when residents of the state of Hawaii received a message, an emergency alert that read, ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii, seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. Imagine waking up and hearing that or seeing that message on your phone or, hearing the sirens. People panicked. And it was a very tense time until we heard from my daughter and that she was okay and this was, we've talked about this in the years since, and that missile scare has kind of been the thing that people talk about in the same way, maybe where were you on 9/11? That's their 9/11, that when you first meet people, where were you, or how did you, or if you go out and people are drinking, where were you during this missile alert? And, the relationship with my daughter keeps evolving. I find it very interesting that it took a near, not annihilation to hear the "I love you, Mom."
So this is a story that I put in poetry form. The story took place many, many years ago when I was living in a very fraught situation in a 3-bedroom house with 2 other very young people. It was a situation that was fraught and hot. Um, and so I wrote this poem many years ago, but I returned to it and I thought, this is a story worth sharing. The title of the poem is called Boarders. I have spelled it Boarders, as in boarding house, people who board together, right? But also you can hear it as boarders, Borders, right? 3 people live in this house. They are he and she and me. 3 toothbrushes stand by the sink, a comb, and a card from Italy. 3 chairs sit in 3 silent circles of light. He reads about Sufis. She drinks dark red tea. And I try to make words come out right. 3 tiny beds in 3 tiny rooms, all the doors shut nice and tight. 3 tiny roomies lower their lids, and the ghosts come out at night. They open up all the doors, and they dance high on their bright white toes. They light up the house with their breathing, hot and cool and close.
We have another returning storyteller who's actually going to be the wrap-up tonight. Mary Lenzini Howe, when we had the story about floods here, Mary and her husband Michael did stories about their experience here in Bloomsburg, going back floods into time immemorial. And at the end of the night, Mary came up to me and said, "You have to do this again. I've got another story I want to tell you. I'm going to tell it to you right now." I'm not going to give anything else away. Mary, you're up.
How fun is this? Ooh, love stories. Well, Oren said it's so nice to be able to tell your story to people and let it out. Well, I've been telling this story for a long time. It is my favorite story, and it's called The Kiss. And I have to start by saying that, in high school, I had a love of my life, I thought, in 9th grade. And for 4 years, we went steady. And then we got married, and we're married for 7 years. But, sometimes as that goes, you go this way. You go apart, right? So my first husband, who was wonderful, and I just took different roads. So I tell you that because at that point in my life, I was living in Ithaca, New York. I love Ithaca, New York. I know, it's an awesome place. And I was working full-time, and I was also singing in a wedding band on the weekends. We did weddings, we did clubs, because I've been singing since I'm 6 years old. So I was singing, and these were 5 guys, right? And the drummer was somebody I worked with, and he said that they were looking for a female lead singer. And I thought, well, gee, I can sing. I've been doing this since I'm 6. And he said, okay, well, come and audition. So I auditioned and got the job. So I was their first female lead singer. 5 guys, me. They're all married. I'm single, right? So we were very popular. We did weddings, so many gigs. It was crazy. And we did so many weddings. Sometimes we were so popular that we did 2 weddings on a weekend. Like one early afternoon and one later in the evening, right? So, I started singing with this band. It was called Not Nothing Fancy. That was the second band. Spectrum. Thank you, dear. Spectrum. And I'm the prop. He's the prop. That's my husband, Michael. Anyway, so I was going and singing at these weddings, right? And The guys in the band who had been without a female lead for so long would do this little shtick, right? So when the woman who catches the bouquet, and especially if she's really pretty, they would call her on stage and fuss over her, right? So I go to a couple months watching them do this thing, and all of a sudden at a rehearsal I go, listen, you're all married. I'm single. I want to meet the guy that catches the garter, right? Come on, give me equal opportunity here. And they thought, oh, okay, we'll include you, right? So we continued doing a ton of weddings, and they started to include me. And I was sowing my oats. Remember that long relationship? So I was really sowing my oats, playing the field. And the guys, the girl would catch the bouquet, and she'd come on stage. They'd make a fuss, and then the guy that would catch the garter, he'd come on stage, and it was like, I would give him a kiss of some sort, right? Okay. So this one week we were doing a wedding, and the guy, usually at that part in the wedding reception when the band's playing, they've had a few drinks, and this guy had a few drinks. So the woman catches the bouquet, she comes on stage, the guy catches the garter, he comes on stage, and he's pretty, tipsy. And the band's prodding him on, and he goes to give me a kiss, and he dipped me into the drum set, and I almost hurt my back. Okay, so at the next rehearsal, I go to the guys, nope, not doing that anymore. I don't want to get a back injury. This is probably not a good idea. I said, let's just cut me from the thing, because that was kind of too close for comfort. So they all said, okay, and that next weekend, we had 2 weddings. The first one was at the Holiday Inn in Cortland, New York, right, which is about 27 miles north of Ithaca. And the second one was back in Ithaca. So we're in this big Holiday Inn ballroom, 250 people. Was a big wedding. And it's the first wedding after I said, take me out, right? So the woman that catches the bouquet, very pretty, very sweet young woman, comes up on stage and they make a fuss. And I'm thinking, I'll shake their hand, but don't make anything big out of this, right? So time for the garter. Guy catches the garter, and he comes toward the stage, and I put out my hand to shake his hand. And instead of shaking my hand, he did one of these. And I thought, whoa, there's points. And the guys in the band were so devilish. They all started to go, no, give him an Italian hello. We want to see that Italian kiss. So they had planned that. They knew they were going to set me up. And I was like, oh, and this poor guy who catches the garter stands there, and he doesn't know what's going on. 250 people in the room are going, what the heck is going on? My family. So I step off the bandstand, and I was nervous because the place is quiet, 250 people quiet. And I look up at him, I go, they want us to kiss. And he goes, okay. And I said, I was so nervous, and he was so cute. I said, your wife isn't going to mind, is she? And he looks at me and goes, the guy that catches the garter isn't married. And I go, oh, that's right. And I said, are you ready? And he goes, yep. And we kissed. Now, that kiss, there were no fireworks. It was a lovely kiss, really was. But there was nothing, how they say, none of that. And he, goes, and the whole room is still like, what is going on, right? So he goes back to his whatever, and I go back to singing. And now we're packing up to go to the second wedding back in Ithaca. So I'm standing there, and I'm wrapping the microphone cords and taking out equipment. And as I was taking out equipment, we had to walk by this little group of people, one of which was the guy that caught the garter, and other people I didn't know, but I knew that was the guy that caught the garter, right? So I'd walk by, and we had that little talk, little talk, like, oh, hi, what's your name? And okay, what's your name? And I go back and come back and get some more equipment. And, oh, well, yeah, that was really kind of fun. And it's a beautiful wedding, back. So it's now the last trip to the truck. And he stops me in his little group. And I didn't realize at the time one of his little group was his mother. She was in the little group. And he says to me, so, a bunch of us are going out for some drinks, and I'd really like to know if you'd like to come along. And I thought, well, that's really nice, and thank you very much, but, we have another wedding in Ithaca at the Sheraton, and I can't, I'm sorry. And he looks at me and he goes, oh, that's all right. He said, well, come back after you're done. I said, do you know where Ithaca is? And he goes, yeah, I know where it's at. I said, well, yeah, it's like 27 miles south of here, and the wedding starts at 7. They hired us to 11. If they like us, we've had a lot of people ask us to stay overtime. That's late. He goes, well, and he goes into his pocket and he rips out his Holiday Inn room key. And he hands it to me. And I said, what is this? And he goes, well, if it's that late and you're not too tired, come back. And, you could go to the desk and show them the key and they'll let you know where we're at. I'll leave a message or something, so they know you're blah, blah, blah. And I said, here's your key. What's your name again? Just tell me your name again. So he told me his name. I said, listen, if it's not too late and I'm not too tired, I'll think about coming back. He goes, oh, okay. So we go to Ithaca, we do the wedding, they love us, hire us overtime. Now it's after midnight, it's like 12:30 in the morning, and we're in the Sheraton Ballroom on the second floor, and I'm wrapping up those microphone wires again, and I'm talking to myself. He was really nice, he kissed my hand, there was small talk, he offered me his room key, that was something else. Should I go back? Did he really mean it? Do I want to get involved? Is this worth it? Blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, the bass player, who's my friend, who's behind me, goes, Mary. I said, yeah, I'm not looking at him. He goes, I think there's somebody here for you. And I turned around, and I did an honest to God triple take. 1, 2. And there was Michael standing in the door of the Sheraton Ballroom. And I was shocked. I was shocked. I walked up and I looked at him. I said, oh my gosh, you're here. And how did you know where I was? And he looked at me and he smiled with that really handsome smile. And he says, well, you said you were singing at a wedding in the Sheraton in Ithaca. This is the only Sheraton in Ithaca. And I went, oh. And he says, and besides that, I've been downstairs in the bar watching the band for the weekend for the last 2 hours waiting for you to finish. And I thought, whoa, this guy is different, right? The hand, the key, the come back, the now come to find me. So I said, okay. I said, listen, let's go and have last call in Ithaca, right? Now, the Sheraton's about outside of Ithaca, and I lived all the way across town. I said, I'd really like to change out of my singing clothes so you can follow me, and then we'll go have a drink, right?
You tried to lose me on the way across
I did. I really didn't try to lose him. But went home, changed, and by the time I got home and changed, it was already after 1. I said, well, it was 1:30ish. I said, we could go for last call. I said, but I have some orange juice and vodka here. We could have a drink or two here. And he goes, oh, okay. So he takes his coat off and he comes in and, we make some drinks. And we were watching MTV. We were watching The Who in concert. Now, I have to tell you, this is back in 1983. Okay, so it's the day. And in my half a house apartment, there's a couch, right? And he's on one end of the couch and I'm on the other end of the couch. And we had this really great conversation, like for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I'm thinking, he's not making any moves. He's all the way on that end of the couch, and I'm on this end of the couch. So I said to him, to kind of get it started, I said, isn't it great we have the first kiss out of the way? And he looks at me and he smiles and he goes, yeah, that was pretty nice, and stays on his end of the couch. I'm thinking, well, now what? I was checking the mirror just to make sure I looked okay, or, is something going on here? So after, it was now about 4:30 in the morning, and no moves, nothing. So I thought, okay, well, sometimes you just have to, it's either going to you-know-what or you-know-what. So I get up off the couch and I said, I think it's getting really late and I am really tired. It's been a long day, 2 weddings. And he goes, yeah, I bet you are really tired. And he was gracious, just the gentleman, perfect gentleman. And I'm walking him to my door and he's getting ready. He's putting on his jacket to go out the door. And I said, so I think, it's really time for me to go to bed. But before I go to bed, I'm going to take a shower and then I'll go to bed, unless you'd like to join me. He whipped off that jacket so fast. You could not believe how fast the man whipped off his jacket. And that story is to tell you that you can show the first picture. That's the kiss. Nice. Now, that is unusual to have that 30 seconds after I met him. You can see the people in the background, right? They're all like, what is going on? But that was the kiss. And then he asked me, he did end up moving in 2.5 months later, and we lived together. And he asked me to marry him almost every day, and I'd say no. Because, I really didn't want to have another this. And so I was unsure. And it wasn't like my first marriage was bad. I just didn't want to make another mistake. So I'd say no, 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 no. And there's another story in there, and I'm not going to tell it tonight, but on Super Bowl Sunday of 1985, lead to We're Still Not Married, I am now with child. And I kind of thought we would go that route for a lot of other reasons and a different story at a different time. But so we were going to get married. I remember calling my mom, who was a very staunch, we're Roman Catholic. None of the living together worked for her, and none of that was acceptable. But she got used to it, I guess. And I called her and I said to her, oh, Mom, you'll be really happy to know Michael and I are going to get married. And she said, oh, okay. And I said, and you're going to be a grandmother. Click. And I called my sister after. I said, I told her in the right order. I don't know why she got so upset. But here is the next. We got married on February. Yesterday was 37 years. And really, love is an up and down thing. It is a roller coaster, and I don't particularly like roller coasters, but with Michael by my side, it makes it worth the thrills and the chills and the miserableness, if there is some, and the struggles. So yeah, love is really worth it. And this is how we ended up. That's our family. We have 2 daughters and 6 grandchildren. Awesome. And we still fight. We did last night after our Valentine's Day dinner. But we still love each other very much, and that's the. Oh, Michael. He's so bad. Thank you for listening, and thank you for the opportunity for me to share that story in this setting. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our storytellers. We look forward very much to doing this again. Go to exchangearts.org. Look in the gallery. It has calls for entry for the rest of 2022. See which shows appeal to you, which of those themes you have stories for, and get in touch. And that goes for all of you out there too. Let us know what stories you want to tell, and we'll see you here. Thank you all.
My baby, she's my baby, what a treat. Yeah, yeah. I can't call her sugar. Sugar never was sugar, sugar never was sugar, sugar never, 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 sugar, 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 never, 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 was so sweet. Yeah, yeah, I can't call her sugar. Sugar never was so sweet.